In this video, I'm going to show you how to make an assembly drawing for the bearing assembly project. Start by clicking on New Assembly option that you have right here, or you could go to New, pick on New, which will take you to here. You could come down and pick on a standard IAM. I can double click on that guy. I'll open this up. And over here we have the Place button. And I just want to pick, if I'm seeing Place from Content Center, I want to pick on this down arrow and just choose Place. Alright, that's going to open up some files, and I'll be able to see all of my parts. And I want to put these in the order that I want them assembled, and this will affect the order of the parts list as well. So I'm going to choose the bearing base first. And I have a bearing base named Bearing Base V2, and this is the one that has the edits to it that came with revision A. So I'm going to pick OK, and I'm just going to place that in here. I'm just going to pick and then right click and pick OK, and so that just puts in one instance of the base. Next I'm going to pick Place, and this time I'm going to put the sleeve in. And actually the sleeve I want is the version 2 of the sleeve, so I'm going to pick on this, though yours is probably named sleeve. And I'm going to pick Open, and I'm just going to place it out here in space someplace. And next I'm going to go to Place, and I'm going to pick the bearing top V2 and pick OK, and I'm going to place it in here like that, and then I'm going to right click and pick OK. Next, what I'm going to do is I want to ground the bearing base. Now, a way to do that is just to move your cursor onto it and right click your mouse and come down here and pick Grounded. By doing that, it locks this into place, and the other parts will have to adjust to it. So this guy's not going to move anymore. These guys will have to move depending on which constraints that I apply to them. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is constrain the sleeve, and this collar right in here, I want to take this edge. This is the longest end of the sleeve, and I want it to go through this hole, and I want that collar to be constrained to the bottom of this counter bore that I have right here. So I'm going to pick on the Constrain option, and I'm going to use the Insert constraint. So I'm going to pick Insert, and I want to come right over here and select on the front edge of that collar right there, and then I want to go inside of that counter bore and pick the bottom of the counter bore. And what that does is it pops those in, it aligns them along their center axis, but it also puts those two edges together. Now if I wanted to flip the orientation of that, I could pick on that, and the longer end will come out in this direction, but that's not what I want. So I'm going to come over here and pick there and select Apply. Alright, so my first constraint is done. This guy can still rotate, but it's locked in place along the center axis, so the two center axes of these parts are aligned to each other. Next, I'm going to continue to use the Insert constraint, and this time I'm going to pick on this round edge that I have right here on the bearing base. I'm going to select it, and what it's going to do then, it's going to select its center axis as something to constrain something else to that has a center axis, which just happens to be this guy. And so I'm going to come down here and pick on the edge of that, and it pops those two together. And then I'm going to apply that, and I'm going to close this for a second because I want to show you something. I'm going to put my mouse on the bearing top, and you'll notice if I move my cursor around, this guy can still spin. Now that's fine if that's what I want, but what I want to do is I want to prevent this from spinning, but I want to make sure that it's lined up. And in fact, what I want is this plane to be aligned to that plane right there. And the way to do that is to select the Constraint option and the Flush Mate constraint. So I'm in the Mate constraint, which is this one over here, and I'm going to pick the Flush option. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick on this plane here, and then I'm going to pick on this plane, and it's going to align those flush to each other, and I'm going to apply, and then I can close this. Now at that point my assembly is finished, but it's time to add in the hardware. Alright, so let's place our hardware into the bearing assembly. What we're going to need is 4 washers and 4 bolts, and we're going to place those from Inventor's Content Center. So I'm going to come over here to where my place command is located, and yours may right now be on just place like it is right there. And what you're going to do is pick on the down arrow and choose Place from Content Center. Content Center is an area of Inventor that has a bunch of different standard hardware already created that you can insert into your models, like for example bolts and nuts, pins, rivets, washers as shown here. I'm going to double click on bolts, and I'm going to pick hex head, and then I'm going to look for the one called hex bolt inch. I'm going to click on that, and what it requires me to do at that point is just pick a point in here where it's going to place a bolt. So I'm just going to pick out here in space, and that's going to open up a table because I still need to define the bolt specifically. So I know I want a 1/2 inch diameter bolt, and I want it to be 2.75 inches in length, but I still haven't specified what the thread size or the thread type will be. So I need to pick on table view over here, and what that does is it kicks me into this table, and I can see that my thread is 1/2-13 UNC. So that's 1/2 inch major diameter, 13 threads per inch, unified national course. Major diameter is 1/2 an inch, and the length is 2.75. So if I didn't see the thread that I want, and you can scroll down and you can see most of these are unified national course threads in the 1/2 inch, but if you get down far enough you'll get into a 1/2 inch 20 unified national fine. Now that's not what I want, obviously, so I'm going to come back up here. It should still be selected. This 1/2 inch, 2.75 inch in length, and 1/2-13 UNC is what I want, so I'm going to choose OK. And it's going to build one of those, and I'm going to pick one, pick again, pick again, pick again, then right click and choose OK. So those are my bolts. Next, from Content Center, what I'm going to want to do is place my washers. So I'm going to pick Place from Content Center. Now it remembers we were working with bolts last time, so I'm going to click right up here where at the top of the tree over here and pick on fasteners. Double click on washers, and this is a plain washer is what I'm looking for. Double click on that, and the washer that I'm looking for is plain washer inch. Alright, so let's see if we can locate the plain washer inch. There are a lot of washers to choose from here, as you can see. Plain washer metric, here we go right here, plain washer inch. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm just going to pick one out here in space, and again it's going to open up the table, and I want a 1/2 inch washer. So I'm going to go to 1/2 inch right here, and the type of washer that I want is a B washer, and I want the outside diameter to be 1 inch. So it looks like I have the washer that I want. I'm going to pick OK, and I'm going to pick one, pick again, pick again, pick again. So I have 4 instances of that washer, and then I'm going to right click and choose OK. So the first part that I'm going to constrain is I'm going to place one of these washers in the bottom of this counter bore right here, and this is a shallow counter bore, and sometimes we call that a spot face when they're shallow like that, and really all it's doing is providing a seat for this washer. So I'm going to choose constrain again, and this time I'm going to use insert, and I'm going to pick at the front edge of that washer, and I'm going to pick at the bottom edge of this counter bore right there, and it's going to plop that guy in there, and I'm going to apply that, and I'm going to do it again here and pick at the bottom of that and apply, pick again at the front edge, pick at the bottom of that counter bore and apply, and pick at the leading edge here, pick at the bottom of this counter bore and pick apply. Now the next thing I want to do is place one of these bolts in there, and I want to put it right on top of one of those washers. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm still in the insert command. I'm going to pick at that edge right there, which is the leading edge of the head of that bolt. I'm going to pick there, and I'm going to pick right up here at the outside edge of this washer, on that edge right there, and it plops that bolt in there just like that. And I pick apply, and I'm going to continue to do that. Pick there, apply, pick here, pick there, apply, and pick here, and pick right there, and pick apply. And at that point I can close that. And I have the assembly completed. Now, one thing you might check is if I look over here and I go to my view cube and I click on the right view, I want to make sure that the sleeve is sticking through this base, because the base is thicker than the top, and so you have to make sure that your sleeve is oriented correctly. If the sleeve is not oriented correctly, here's what you could do. Come over here and move your cursor onto the top and right click and choose suppress. And when you do that, it will suppress that view and you'll be able to see your sleeve over here. You could go find the sleeve over here in the tree and expand on it by picking on the caret, and you could right click on that and you could delete that constraint. And when you delete that constraint, you can put your cursor on the sleeve and drag it out. Then you could come in here and constrain, and you could choose the insert again, and let's say that you wanted the short end to go in there. You would pick here, you would pick in the bottom, it would pop the short end in, you would apply that, and of course I'm not going to leave it that way because that's not the correct way to do it. And at that point I want to turn the top back on, so I'm come over here to the tree and you can see the bearing top has a line drawn through it because it's suppressed. Just right click on that, come down and pick on suppress, and it would turn the visibility back on of that piece right there. Now, as I am reminding you, this should be turned around the other direction, but I just wanted to give you that example.